I am so excited about today's panel. I am here with Emmy award-winning filmmaker Lucina Fisher, producer, director of The Dads, as well as I'm here with Tori Cooper from the HRC, Director of Strategic Outreach and Training, and Reg Calgando, who is the HRC Director of Regional and State Campaigns. How was everybody's Trans Day of Visibility before I get started?
Well, we were visible. We were visible. I was able to see Tori. Tori was able to see me. So right there, right off the bat, we did well. But I think Trans Day of Visibility hit a little bit different today or this year. Visibility is something that is incredibly important. And I feel more called to be visible now than I did even a few months ago. And we also know how much risk that can sometimes come with. But I certainly made it my business to wear my colors proudly and show up for some community events on TDOV this year.
Well, yeah, and visibility is a huge part of why you put together The Dads, Lucina. But I love for people who don't know and who aren't familiar with this project. It started as a short that was on Netflix, produced by Dwyane Wade. But can you? We're gonna run a clip really quickly, and then we'll talk about it.
I consider myself a patriot. Things that you love the most and things that care the most are worth fighting for. Our children are worth fighting for. This country is worth fighting for. It's gonna get hard. It's been hard. It may get harder. My biggest fear is that I have to flee.
That line hits so hard, Lucina. Can you tell us what The Dads is, the project, and what we can expect to see?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with all of you. And at this time, in this moment in our lives, The Dads, the clip that you just played, is from the new film, which is a feature documentary that grew out of the short, for which we won the Daytime Emmy Award. And as you can see, it comes at a particular time where families are really having to make a very difficult choice. These are fathers of trans kids and gender expansive children. And out of the short, they continue to build this movement, which is really wonderful, to support other fathers around the country. And they continued retreats. You see them at their second retreat. And Frank speaking there, it was a bit of foreshadowing to what was to come. I think everyone had both fears and hopes. Unfortunately, our worst fears came true when the presidential election happened later that year. And as we were filming, we realized we had a very different film than what we started with. And this one was extremely important. And we really needed to document this moment where fathers were having to choose between country and family. And the one thing that they did not, that there was no choice in the matter, was that they were going to show up for their kids. They knew that without a doubt, love was going to continue to rule in their lives, and that they were going to make a decision based from that. The love of their children, the love of their families, and the love of this brotherhood that they're forming. Yeah, the film is out. We premiered at South by Southwest last month, and Dwyane Wade is back on board as our executive producer. And one of the fathers, Stephen Chakumba, actually stepped up to become the producer of this film. And we had I believe, 11 dads at South by Southwest. So the movement is growing despite, all of this blowback.
Well, Tori, when you see this clip, you're obviously used to seeing the conversation somewhat evolve, being a part of the communications team of HRC. Has this conversation shifted with families and with allies?
So, first of all, thank you for hosting all of us. We know each other and we know you, Maya, but we're also really honored that you chose us to be here today to have this discussion. So, with that being said, yes, conversations have had to change. They've changed internally at HRC. They've changed for those of us who happen to be trans or gender expansive who work at HRC. They've also changed greatly in the communities that we serve, not just trans and gender expansive people, but also in communities where people who align with us and ally with us exist and live and thrive and work and offer support. Those conversations have changed from what do we do next to what do we do now? There has been such a quick and well-financed barrage of hate directed towards trans people that for some folks, they can't see what tomorrow's going to look like simply because they have to focus on what's existing right now, what's happening right now. Every single day, there's something coming out. And so our job is the three of us, but then also the many people that we represent and work with and work alongside and work for. Our job is to make sure that people are focusing on now, but also to remind them that we've got to plan for tomorrow as well. Project 2025 was years in the making. And so whatever our project number is going to be, we have to plan that. We have to be in the heavy planning stages of that right now, while we're also helping to make sure that those of us who are in this fight have some type of mental health safety, that we have physical safety, that we have food and water, hydration, rest, and also, most importantly, that we have support and love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the instability of it all, having to plan for the future, but also try to protect oneself in the present is incredibly challenging, something that I think a lot of Americans are not familiar with. Reg, when you try to communicate with people what it is to sort of exist in everywhere all at once. You're under attack, but also trying to move forward. What's a good way to try to explain to people what that is like and how that hurts us all as Americans, not just people in the LGBTQ plus community?
It's such a great question, because when I look at myself in the mirror, and I think about my life, like, I'm just a guy. I'm just, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a neighbor, I'm a coworker, I'm a son, I'm a brother, and all of those different identities are all at play all at once, and that I'm just trying to function. And I think that the experience that trans people are feeling right now, certainly we feel like we're under more of a microscope because we are. And we also know that we are not the only ones who are under a microscope. And so when I say I'm just a guy, a lot of times it's, well, how have you been feeling? Like, how do you feel when you open up your phone? You look at your phone first thing in the morning and you see all of the news scrolling by. That same panic and that same terror, I think, can come up. And to Tori's point earlier in her introduction, she talked about the need for resilience and the need for joy. And so it's really, a lot of times when I'm talking to people, it is a balance of both. I tell people I am full of love and I am full of rage all at the same time, all the time. And that is what gets me through. It is being able to, talk with people in places like Kansas and places like Idaho, and giving them hope, and also helping them through like the very immediate I just lost my driver's license. What do I do next?
Right.
I
Well,
just had this happen. What do I do next? And so sometimes it's just taking it moment to moment.
there is a lot of moment to moment here, and I like what you said about kind of your walls coming down and just speaking about how you actually feel in this moment. I think that's starting to resonate with a lot of people who are can no longer answer the question "How are you?" with just "I'm great." We're not doing that anymore. Did you find, Lucina, in your conversations with the dads that they started to open up more and more as the situation got scarier and scarier and more intense?
Well, it's interesting. I think because of the relationships between me and the fathers, as a mom of a trans kid, I'm a fellow advocate. I know many of them already. And those new dads who are coming into the fold, they feel instantly comfortable with other men who are experiencing this, walking the same journey as they are. So it never was really a matter of them opening up. In fact, I think they were so grateful to find community and people who understand. And I feel like that's one of the big messages of the film, that we can't go on in isolation. We can't survive in isolation. We really need community and we have to find each other. And it's really together that we're going to get through any hardship. And so, these dads are really showing a new way, I think, for men to talk about difficult issues. We're in this time, certainly, where there's a lot of discussion around what men and boys should be doing, how they should be in the world, especially in this country. And we see some examples of that, I would say are wrongheaded, to put it mildly. Um, and I feel like the dads are this counter example. They are an example of the full range of humanity. We need to be able to, and men especially, express our fears, our vulnerabilities, to share that we don't have all the answers, as Dwyane Wade often talks about. And so I feel like what the dads offers, both as a film and as a movement, is this opportunity for men to live and exist a different way, and to open up and show what that looks like. And it looks like bringing community to you. It looks like bringing support to you. It looks like helping you through a difficult time. And I think that's a message for all of us.
Yeah. Speaking of Dwyane Wade, we do have a clip of him talking about the film. So I'd love to roll that and then talk a little bit about it.
I think you're alone on the journey of life. I'm a lot, especially in this. I thought I was alone. And then I realized there's other dads out there. There's other dads of color out there. You just never know your community. And so to be able to be in a position that, with this film that Lucina brought to us, because she, heard our journey. She heard Zaya's journey. She heard my journey as a father and wanted us to be a part of it. It was a no-brainer for us to have the opportunity to, uplift the community. And I'm so glad we did it, because it needs even more uplifting today than it did yesterday. And so, just an awesome feeling to be a part of.
It's so important that it is the dads, right? Because it's usually the moms, us moms. I'm a mom of a trans teen as well, who are out there visible and fighting and showing that it's the family. We just love our kids is so very important. Do you feel, especially Dwyane Wade being a sports figure, how has that changed the way people perceive what it is to support your child? Because it feels like some people are almost afraid to support their children, and Dwyane Wade just kind of came right out there. Tori, I love to hear your thoughts on it.
So, my father is 6'3" and a former basketball player and Black, and grew up in a great family that supported and loved him, and is one of the most masculine and if the most heterosexual man exists in the world, it's my dad. My grandfather was 6'6" and a giant of a man. My grandmother called him Papa Bear. And if my dad is the most masculine man in the world, then my grandfather is the second most. And they love me. And they love all of us. And they understand that no two people are the same and that our journeys are different. And so one of the things that I love about the dads is that every single lie that the Republican Party and the maggots have shared about trans people and about parents of trans people and our families, these guys, in the most wholesome, simple, honest ways, really have dispelled all of those things and added truth to them. They've said that you can't support your kid, that you can't love God and love a trans person at the same time. You know, they talk about this hyper masculinity, and that's why I started talking about my dad and my granddad. And these are masculine heterosexual men who happen to love their children who also happen to be trans. And so for those of us who are fortunate to have fathers in our lives, and especially fathers who love and support us the way that these dads do, I think that it is a great opportunity for us to share that experience with folks who may not have that. And you know, we tend to want to be aspirational in the things that we look for in society and in the media. And so this is a great aspirational journey for folks. And it may actually help to provide, even if you don't know these guys, if you've never met them, if you just follow them on social media, or if you just seen them for the first time, this presents an opportunity for you to have a role model.
Absolutely, because people change and they evolve. This idea that somehow somebody can have one opinion about trans people and that's the opinion that they're going to have for the rest of their lives, that is so short-sighted to me. And I love, Lucina, that in the film, Stephen talks about his journey. I think it's so important because for us, it's about family. It was never about politics. It was only politics once we started getting attacked. And so, Reg, a question for you. Do you feel in communicating this now that people are starting to realize how politics has turned this into a problem that never existed, and that it's not trans people saying, we want to talk about ourselves all the time and we want this to be about us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I joke about, we talk about the Trans Day of Visibility. I would like the Trans Day of a nice little nap and some snacks, maybe, just because it feels like that would be a lot nicer. But trans people are not taking your jobs. Trans people are not the reason why gas costs $4, $5 a gallon. Trans people are not the reason why our education systems are failing. Trans people are not the reason why we are engaged in another war. Trans people are not the cause for your social ills. We are not the cause for your social ills in the way that many groups who have been isolated and marginalized and blamed have also not been a cause for those social ills. And I think people are starting to realize, wait a second, why are we talking about who can go into what bathroom right now when I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to afford groceries at the end of this week?
Right.
Why are we talking about what my gender marker looks like on my license when I don't know if I'm going to be able to fill up my gas tank, or I'm going to be able to have health care, or there are so many other issues that Americans are clamoring for our leadership to deal with. And for whatever reason, we have several reasons, the trans folks have just become the spotlight, and it is getting a lot harder to take people off of what is actually at stake. And it is a lot harder to, we can no longer be the distraction issue. We really,
right. Well, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, because everybody professed to care about the kitchen table issues, right? And it seems like they didn't as much as they did. It was more about having a worldview that looked very similar to the world that they wanted for themselves and didn't really care about other people's rights. And at the same time, LGBTQ plus organizations have been warning people that it was never just about sports. It was never just about the kids, because we see them going after trans rights for adults as well and taking away driver's licenses and things like that. Why is it that people, because it's got to be enraging in some ways, it is for me, that they had to wait until it was too late, almost, meaning they had to wait until almost all of their rights are now being stripped away as well, like the gas prices, the war, etc. What is it about people that they don't want to learn before it's too late? Tori, you can answer.
Well, I think so. I'm going to give some people the benefit of the doubt here. And I usually don't say that when it comes to folks who voted for Trump, but I will give some people the benefit of the doubt. They didn't think it could be this bad.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think that these policies would affect them. And to continue kind of in the vein that Red said, if you are a woman and you happen to be a cisgender woman and you happen to be built a little bit different, or you're a bit more masculine or less feminine presenting, you could be someone that's accosted in a bathroom. Because the Republicans said that trans people were doing things in bathrooms that we're not. And the truth is, trans people, we just want to go to the bathroom, pee and poop in peace, and then wash our hands, because we're really clean people and we always wash our hands. And so we're also not people, because the administration has continued to create these ridiculous ridiculous lies about trans people. You think about service and military service in particular. Reg, you're a veteran, aren't you?
I am not. I'm from a family of veterans.
A family of veterans. Right.
Yeah.
So thank them for their service. But with that being said, there are people who didn't think that policies prohibiting trans people from serving would affect them. But there now is talk about a draft. Imagine if all trans people who wanted to serve in the military were able to serve. Perhaps then they wouldn't be so scared that folks are going to have their sons go, because the Trump administration is also saying that women aren't fit for service. And so, so there's so many things that people perhaps didn't think would apply to them. You think of insurance is another great example of that. There's insurance is being cut. ADAP programs, like in the state of Florida and about 21 other places, are changing. They're either already in the process or considering making changes to ADAP and Medicare and Medicaid. And that affects more than just trans people. You know, in the grand scheme of things, we're a relatively small community when compared to cisgender people. I want to make that distinction clear. And yet the policies that affect us also affect other people.
Oh, absolutely. Just with the decision by the Olympic Committee, now all women have to be genetically tested.
Correct. And may I add to that very quickly, please, Maya? I was thinking about this earlier today when I was having a discussion over this, and they asked me, well, how do you feel about this? I think it's stupid. And not just is it stupid, but who determines what those results are? And what if someone has an ambiguous result? Does that then mean that there's someone who must do a physical inspection? And who grants them the authority to make that physical determine based on what they see and what they don't? So I think some people would say, oh, that's far-fetched what I just said. But is it?
No, not in these times we're in. I think we're seeing just how extreme things have become.
Correct.
Yeah.
Lucina, there are police around the country who are saying that bathroom bills are not enforceable. They're dangerous. They're ridiculous. They're unnecessary. And I also like to make this clear. two of us are trans and two of us on this call have children who are trans. I will say this to every person that's listening. If you know the genitals of the person in the stall next to you, then you're the one who should be arrested and not them.
Absolutely. And what I think people fail to realize is that in the United States, you can't run from this anymore either. It used to be, oh, I'm okay. I'm in a blue state, so I'll be fine. And then we see these federal laws coming. But now we're also seeing a situation where the California governor race is looking a little dicey. And so all of a sudden, maybe we won't have those protections. Lucina, as a storyteller, what kind of stories need to be told now going into the future that can help people understand how you can't run from these kind of fascist laws, that they will catch up to us eventually?
Exactly, that we all have to understand we play a role and we have a role to play. And, Frank says it so well when he's like, you folks in blue states, you got to wake up. Like, this is happening. And very quickly, we saw that once the Supreme Court decision, came down around gender affirming care, that clinics in blue states were closing, right? Clinics that, my family used. And it's shocking. And it should wake us all up to the fact that, as you say, there is no safe place. Even families who have left the country, they're seeing in other countries these anti-trans bills, many of them modeled on legislation here in the US, are popping up in Europe, in South America. And the reality is, this is a global issue. And we all have to look at how we're interconnected. And I love what Tori and Reg are saying, that, this isn't just about this relatively small slice of the population. It's really about how we are all interconnected. And if it happens to this community, it can happen to any community. If it happens in the US, it can happen in other countries. And so it's really about understanding that interconnectedness. And, that's part of the conversation that we opened, the dialogue that we started in the film, when one of the moms who, moved with her family outside of the country says, I'm from your future and you still have time. Listen to me.
That, it's funny that you say that, because many people know I'm in Portugal, and they, unfortunately, this was supposed to be the backup plan for a lot of people, and they've been having backsliding with their laws. And they literally, their parliament just, I think it was today, they might be looking at conversion therapy bans and getting rid of those so quickly right after we did ours. And we haven't talked about conversion therapy yet on this panel, and I think we need to. Reg, in your communications with people, and for everybody who doesn't know, you should know this, that SCOTUS struck down Colorado's ban on conversion therapy, saying that it was a First Amendment protection, basically because it's talk therapy. And so a therapist should be able to talk to their client about whatever they would like to talk to them about. And it was an 8-1 decision. So, Reg, this... you obviously are communicating with plenty of people that have probably either been subjected to conversion therapy or who fear that this may happen to them right now. Can you tell us a little bit about how conversion therapy hurts not just children, but I was going to say teenagers, adults as well?
I mean, honestly, if you've ever spoken to anyone who has been through conversion therapy or has even been conversion therapy adjacent, the long-lasting impacts of it can be absolutely devastating, and not just devastating to the children or the adolescents who go through it, but to their families. Like, you are talking about damaging familial relationships. You were talking about telling someone, like, I have a 10-year-old, and he has, like, I never want to dim that light. He is absolutely incredible. And when I think about anyone trying to throw a blanket over that light, over that joy, over any of his friends, it just enrages me. You know, we talk about, I want to make sure that I get this quote right, because Justice Jackson, the lone dissenter on the court, said, ultimately, because the majority plays with fire in this case, I fear that the people of this country will get burned. It is not just the people who, like I said, experience conversion therapy, because you are telling someone, you don't know yourself. And I have to tell you, as someone who struggled with my gender identity for a number of years, I tried to be a woman in every way possible. I tried to be a girly girl. That didn't work. I tried to be a tomboy. That didn't work. But you know what did work? This works. When I started gender affirming care, when people started calling me Reg, when I felt that people respected me, I turned into a whole new person. It opened up a light for me that I didn't think was possible. And that's what I want for every child to experience. I want every child to be able to experience that light. I want every person to experience that light and possibility. I want you to be able to know yourself as well as I know myself. And I also know that I'm the only one who's going to know myself as well as I know myself. And I wouldn't dare tell anyone else what to do with their lives. And so I can't see why the court is okay with saying, yeah, it's totally fine to tell a child who they are at their young age. No, you have no idea what a child is going to become. And you have to let that bloom and blossom on its own.
That was beautifully put. Tori, does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. And Reg, I could listen to you all day. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you for bringing that into this space. I will also say that I think that folks who are left-leaning, or folks who are identified as progressives or as Democrats, or however you choose to identify yourself, I think many of us have learned to live with at least a duality, perhaps multiple different identities can coexist at the same time. Yes, we can be Christian or Jewish or Muslim or none of the above, or Catholic, and be trans, and be a Southerner, and be this and be that. Where I think that many other folks only see themselves as one thing, and it is the entirety of who they are, or they're taught to believe that only one thing can exist in their life. And so when we think about things like conversion therapy, from my knowledge and from the folks who I've spoken with, who've respectfully and emotionally shared some of the details, it is about conforming a person to a single piece of themselves that may or may not even exist. It's a version that other people think that you should be. And do any of us really need for anyone to tell us who we are and who we aren't? The truth is, we know. And that's part of the transition of growing from a baby to a toddler, and from a toddler to a child, and from a child to a teenager, and teenager to adult. The people who I believe are the most fulfilled and the most functional in society are people who have opportunities to learn and grow and develop and to transition in whatever ways that transition is applicable. And for some of us, that simply involves transitioning our physical bodies and our mentality and perhaps a name so that it more closely coincides with who we are on the inside.
But I love that because we're always, I'm thinking of Michelle Obama, right? We're always in the process of becoming who we are, you know, and I'm continuing to become this filmmaker, that this is my journey at this moment, you know, using storytelling as my advocacy. But I didn't start out this way. And so I love that. We all can relate and understand what it is to become more of ourselves, period.
And Lucina, as a mom of a trans, well, not teen anymore, but both of us are moms of trans kids. I can't think for a minute, in a million years, I would never subject my child to a therapy where they would tell them that they can't be who they are. I find it unfathomable. I find it disgusting. I find it abusive. In your conversations with the dads, did that topic ever come up where they said, oh, we would want to change our kids, or relatives suggested that we put them in therapy? And if so, what were their kind of responses to that?
You know, no one talked about conversion therapy per se. I think there's always that worry that somehow, as parents, you've done something or you have not done something, right? And what, you know, why is my child this way? And I think for, you know, mothers, often, you know, we sort of come with a little more of that unconditional love, like, you know, we accept our child showing us who they are. I think it can be harder sometimes for men, often because, you know, they get these messages, you know, about how they need to be in the world. And so when things fall outside of that sort of paradigm, it's like, maybe I've done something, or maybe I haven't done something enough. And so, you know, we hear dads talking about that. You know, Frank talks about that in the short film when he says, you know, I thought I needed to throw the pigskin more, you know, and another father, Peter, talks about, you know, making his child wear certain clothes. And to this day, it's a guilt that he carries because he didn't know, or he was listening to other voices. So I think often it's what they think society is telling them to do as men, as fathers, and then as, you know, parenting their children. And it's having to break free of that sort of, you know, those voices and that paradigm to just kind of say, as Dwyane did, you know, I don't know all the answers, but I'm here, you know, or even Stephen, you know, my wife is no longer here. And so it's up to me to just sit here and listen to my child. And, you know, I don't know what to do, but I listened, and I heard them, and I let them cry and say, you know, the thing that they, you know, their biggest secret, the thing that they feared might lead to rejection. And just by sitting there and being with them and saying, I'm on this journey with you, it's tremendous. That is what kids want and need. And then, yeah, these dads can find those answers, you know, from other places like HRC, from the Dads Foundation, from each other. And, you know, be on that journey with community and get that support. But, you know, first just deciding it's okay not to listen to all of the voices and to just be there for your child. That's the first step.
Yeah.
I think about, so I actually met Frank like years ago in Texas. And one of my first interactions with Frank was we were sitting in the Texas legislature, and we were in these like holding rooms, and we would bring up like scores of people to testify. And first, Rachel, his wife, went up, and she was carrying their son, who at the time was like 2 or 3. And then an hour or two later, and we're talking like 1 or 2 in the morning, like it was late. I remember watching on the little screen in my hotel room, Frank carrying his daughter, who was 5 or 6 at the time, and he was holding her. She had wanted to testify. She was asleep. And so he delivered her testimony. Wow. And it's like, you know, you talk about what parents will do. Like those parents, they stayed with their kids. They fought for their kids. Like there is no doubt. And I've met all of those dads. And I got to tell you, like, talk about a model for masculinity and a model for fatherhood and a model for just parenting. Like, if I am half the father that any of those dads are, then I'm doing a good job.
I know you are, Reg. I know you are.
I can get, I was like, Reg, this is the first time I'm meeting you. And I can also say, I know you are. You're bringing me to almost tears.
I know, same.
Truly, we're running out of time, and so I just wanted to ask kind of a final question, if everybody could answer just very briefly, because a lot of the people watching may not have trans people in their lives or may not know where they can access information. What's one thing that someone who's watching right now can do to either educate themselves or to assist and be an ally or an accomplice, as I like to say? Tori, I'll let you go first.
Well, obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that folks could go to hrc.org and find out all kinds of information. I encourage people to go to hrc.org and go into the search bar and type some of the keywords that are questions in your mind. And this isn't what you asked, but I also would love to take this moment to remind people, we don't raise children to be boys or girls. We socialize children to be men and women and to be upbringing parts of society. And so, again, this doesn't have anything to do with your question, but I think we should put this out there. And so for trans people, parents of trans kids, your kids are, because they're trans, it doesn't negate all the wonderful things that you've instilled in them. As a matter of fact, when kids get to be their most authentic selves, what it does is it actually helps them to flourish and be happier and healthier adults. So back to the question real quick. You can also, we have several different resources on our website that can help folks deal with transitioning family members, folks who are transitioning at work, where to seek help in your own communities and that kind of stuff. And there are other resources as well.
Perfect. Reg?
You know, since Tori's already done the plug, I will say, you know, the rules are the same as what you learned when you were a kid. Treat people with respect. It is not that hard. You know, we don't have to think about, when we're talking about like, how do you talk about these issues? I always tell people, you know, don't get caught up in the facts. Don't get caught up in the statistics. Just talk about the people you know. And, you know, you may not know all of the statistics. You may not know that 92% of Americans are actually support non-discrimination rights for trans people. You may not know that 72% of those folks are Republicans, or 72% of Republicans support non-discrimination protections. But you do know your friend Reg, you do know your friend Tori, and you can talk about us and how great we are all day. So I would say, just remember, talk about your friends, get to know us. You may already know us and not even know that you know us.
And there are millions of people who are trans, similar to how we are, that live, look, and perhaps even love differently than we do all across the country. Get to know them too.
100. Love
Absolutely.
that.
And Lucina, you're telling the stories so that people can get to know more people like Reg and Tori who are trans. I think it's so important. I don't feel like there are enough TV shows. I don't feel like there's no sitcoms. I don't know. Am I missing it? I feel like there's a dearth of stories.
Absolutely. And, seek out the stories. Of course, I'd be remiss to say, to not say, seek out the Dads feature. We are on the festival circuit right now, and we are bringing community screenings to communities. So reach out at thedadsfoundation.org. We're starting a conversation about courageous allyship, like these amazing dads, with our impact partner, the Allie Forney Center, which is the largest organization for unhoused LGBTQ folks. That's the other side of when parents don't support their children. So together, we hope we can bring together a group of folks, those who have trans people in their lives and those who don't, who care about their neighbors, and just want to make the world a better place for everyone.
That's all we want, truly. So I thank all of you for joining us. I thank everybody who's watching for joining. I think self-acceptance can lead to accepting others. And so if everybody could just do a little bit of that, that would be awesome. Hug yourself is what I always say to the people who say mean things to others. Go hug yourself. And awesome.
I'm going to steal that.
I was going to say, I like that.
I want everybody to have that.
Well, I had a different verb in mind, but that works.
Well, it's a journey. You could journey into
transition. Yes. I'll transition my language. How about that?
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us. And of course, would love to have you back anytime to continue to talk about all of this as it continues to evolve.
Thank you for having us.